The Dungeon Master Experience is a series of articles written by Chris Perkins in Dungeon Magazine in 2011. The following readings are his words, and though produced before the current edition, still contains great insights, advice, and tips for Dungeon Masters for any edition, and for that matter, any TTRPG. Event Horizon, 11/17/2011, Monday night. The party's campaign against Star-Lord Evandor has reached a threshold. The time has come to forge alliances with powerful forces, from the Knights of Arden to the evil god of secrets, to put down the threat of the Far Realm. The players can sense the inevitability of the impending conflict, which will quite literally determine the fate of the world. The gravity is inescapable. Now comes the hard part. First off, if you're a player in my Monday night game, stop reading now. This article contains plot spoilers for an upcoming episode of the Ayamadra campaign and is for Dungeon Masters only. The title of this week's article is particularly apt because the Monday night group has reached a point of no return. We're halfway through the epic tier, the end is nigh, and the heroes know what must be done. There are plenty of big fights headed their way. They basically know what they're up against, and the biggest mystery outstanding is who will survive to the campaign's glorious end. The title is also a play on words. I'm not really talking about black holes or the gravitational pull of my campaign's plot, but rather responding to a query by Belog the Fierce, who was curious about how I go about designing encounters. I'll endeavor to address the topic without regurgitating information you've seen in the Dungeon Master's Guide and other sources that tackle the topic at great length. Instead, I'll shed some light on a very important episode of the campaign that's about to unfold. First, let me dispel any illusions. I don't write complete, publishable adventures for my home campaign, because I haven't the time and I rather like running with scissors and the improvisational challenge of working without a script. The adventures I tend to write, and I've written a lot of them over the years, are for the benefit of others and often focus on specific locations such as a sprawling dungeon complex or an evil Lich King's fortress, and feature room-by-room explorations of these locations. Location-based adventures are great because they're easy for DMs to run, because each room or area contains its own encounter, and difficult to create on the fly because the amount of room detail and map work required. A DM can take a large, fully detailed adventure location such as the Temple of Elemental Evil and make that the foundation for an entire campaign, the added benefit of not needing to spend a lot of time planning game sessions in advance. If the party ended the previous session in Area 47, you can probably kick off the next session with the heroes entering Area 48. No big deal. But my campaigns tend to be more event-driven than encounter-driven, so the way I prepare for a game session requires a different approach. It's a bit weird that I think of my own campaign as a series of events and plot them out in a way a TV series producer plans a show's seasonal arc. And yet, I'm not a big fan of published event-based adventures written by other people. I think it's because an event-based adventure has a certain pace and sequence that doesn't quite suit every DM style, whereas a location-based adventure is less about what happens when and more about what happens where, taking a lot of the DM's pacing and sequential concerns out of the picture. The episode summary. A typical episode of my campaign is a series of events arranged in the order I expect them to unfold. It all starts with me remembering the events of the previous session and fixating on something as the focus of the upcoming session. The focus might be a player character, an important NPC, a location, a big event, or some combination thereof. In the next Monday's session, the focus is the secret island fortress of Ardenrise, which has been alluded to since the start of the campaign, and which the PCs are finally going to visit for the first time. However, before the PCs reach Ardenrise and learn its secrets, I have some unfinished business from the previous session to tie up. So here's how an evening's worth of D&D comes together in Chris Perkins' home campaign. Step 1. Word. I open a Word document and type a short summary of important events from the previous sessions, which I convert into a previously in Iomandra paragraph to kick off the session. Doing this exercise puts me in the right frame of mind to look at the unfolding tapestry of my campaign, tie up loose ends, and pick up important threads. Step 2. Dramatis Personae. Every game session is an opportunity for character development. Underneath the previously section of my Word document, I spell out the Dramatis Personae, a cast of characters, a call sheet if you will. Typing the list of PCs and NPCs gets me thinking about which heroes to shine the session spotlight on, and how many different NPCs will likely come into play over the course of the evening. Sometimes the list of NPCs is quite short. More often, particularly at higher levels, that's not the case. Step 3. A watched plot. By the time I've finished steps 1 and 2, I have a pretty good handle on where to take the campaign. In this case, I've decided to play up the Knights of Arden, a group of benevolent terrorists dedicated to stamping out corruption in the Dragavar Empire. They've been a behind-the-scenes force of good from the outset, and 2 of the characters have direct ties to them, yet we've never met Arden, the Silver Dragon leader of the group, or visited her secret island. That's about to change. The characters know that the Mirathon Regency, a vassal state of the Dragavar Empire, has been taken over by Mind Flayers. They also just learned that the Knights of Arden recently helped the daughter of the Mirathon Regent escape, and that she's been sequestered on Arden's island. It's not enough to send the heroes to Ardenrise. I also need something to happen there. I've decided that the mad Mirathon Regent, Sar Dakor, wants his daughter back and has an ally hidden in the party's midst. I also know that I have some other stuff to resolve en route to Ardenrise. This step requires me to wrap my brain around the main plot points of the episode, which could, depending on what happens, take multiple game sessions to resolve. Basically, it's how I see the story unfolding in my mind, barring the unexpected. Step 4. Event by event breakdown. Once I've written down my prediction of how the plot will unfold, it occurs to me that there's about a 75% chance that the episode will take an unexpected detour, forcing me to rearrange events or jettison my ideas altogether. Nothing I can do about that. The PCs are epic level after all, and anything can happen. Still, it helps me to get a handle on the scope of the adventure by breaking the plot down into a sequence of events, the order of which is less important than the ideas. After doing the event breakdown for this episode that I decided to call Ardenrise, I realized that it might take more than one session to resolve all the business I have planned. And that's okay. Before the heroes get to Ardenrise, they'll have some interesting scenes with Vecna's followers, and perhaps another Far Realm mishap. Not every event is a combat encounter, but it always adds something to the story or gives the story some forward momentum. Step 5. Other role-playing notes. Event-based adventures make it easy for me to think about the game session in terms of role-playing opportunities for the players. Every event is a role-playing opportunity waiting to unfold, even the ones planned as combat encounters. During Step 4, I'll sometimes think of ideas that don't really qualify as events, but are likely to come into play. I group these together under the heading Other Role-Playing Notes, as a reminder to myself. For example, Stan Brown plays a Dragonborn agent of the Vost Mirage, the equivalent of MI6 in my world. The Vost Mirage leadership sees Arden as a threat to the Dragavar Empire's stability, rather than a potential ally, so I'm expecting some friction between Stan's character and the Knights of Arden played by Michelle and Nick. However, I'm not sure how the potential conflict will be resolved and can't really plan around it. Here, then, is the complete episode summary, which conveniently fits neatly on one double-sided sheet of paper and easily into my campaign binder. Ardenrise. Previously in Iomandra. Osterneth, the Bronze Lich, Vecna's ex-wife, forged an alliance with the party against their common enemy, Star-Lord Evandor, and the Mind Flayers in control of the Marathon Regency, who are using the Dragon's Eye constellation to effect changes in reality. A flight of dragons bore the heroes safely to the island of Shah Hadam, where a derelict Illithid Nautilus had washed ashore. Aided by the Knights of Arden, the heroes commandeered the vessel, raised the ship's elder brain from the dead, and convinced it to do their bidding. Osterneth's changeling manservant, Metis, played by Peter Schaefer, discovered that he could pilot the Nautilus by assuming the form of a Mind Flayer and sticking his tentacles into the ship's navigation system. The Knights of Arden wanted to use the ship to spy on Illithid forces in Marathon waters, and so the heroes persuaded the Elder Brain to cross a vast distance of ocean by taking the ship through the Far Realm. Metis' inability to navigate the plane led to a random encounter with 3 beholders. After surviving the encounter and returning to the natural world, the heroes appeared in the middle of a naval battle between Jagavar and Marathon ships, and quickly took the Nautilus underwater. Using a sea snake figurine of wondrous power, Andraste, played by Michelle Carter, and Kit Valar, played by Jeff Alvarez, rescued 4 survivors of a destroyed Dragavar warship and learned that they're deep inside enemy waters, but not where they hoped to be. Heroes in alphabetical order: Alex von Hayden, one-eyed male human wizard and Wormworn, played by Jeremy Crawford. Andraste, female Eladrin warlord and party leader, played by Michelle Carter. Baharush, male dragonborn rogue and Vast Mirage agent, played by Stan. Bartho, dull-witted male human fighter, played by Matt Cernet. Kettenbar, male wild and shaman from an alternate reality, played by Sean Blakeney. Kit Valar, male elf ranger, played by Jeff Alvarez. Metis, male changeling warlock and Osterneth's manservant, played by Peter Schaefer. Melik, male tiefling warlock and vessel of Ulban, played by Bruce R. Cordell. Therolin, female elf ranger and dragon riding knight of Arden, played by Nick DiPetrillo, with special guest star Xantham Zale, male gnome bard from an alternate reality, played by Kurt Gould. Non-player characters: Arden, female silver dragon and leader of the Knights of Arden. Arando Coronar, male human knight of Arden, captain and Andraste's confidant. Thorn Rel, male tiefling knight of Arden, captain. Lily von Merrick, female human knight of Arden, reporting to Thorn Rel. Kirill Sark, male half-elf knight of Arden, reporting to Thorn Rel. Taurus, maimed male dragonborn knight of Arden, reporting to Thorn Rel. Roxana Kral, female dwarf knight of Arden, reporting to Thorn Rel. Bastian von Hayden, male human knight of Arden, Arando's friend and Alex's cousin. Sarana Falhan, female dragonborn noble and daughter of the Mad Marathon regent. Ramiel, male demon-possessed elf with a dragon orb. Nirska, male dragonborn ex-assassin turned acolyte of Bahamut. Hath Zalaramar, elder brain powering the Illithid Nautilus Soulmonger. Alethar Balefrost, male half-elf lich working with Osterneth. Kronz, skeletal red dragon overlord with Osterneth, the bronze lich, Vecna's ex-wife and PC's temporary ally. And Amazia, female dragonborn priest of Bahamut. Episode synopsis: Thornrel recommends that Andraste assume command of an Illithid Nautilus, Soulmonger, which has been without a captain. The heroes and the Knights of Arden conduct a very successful reconnaissance of Marathon waters before setting sail for Ardenrise. En route, Osterneth instructs Metis to guide the ship to pre-arranged coordinates where Vecna cultists are waiting to perform a ritual designed to make the heroes aware of past reality changes and protect them against future ones. But she also has ulterior motives. On Ardenrise, the Silver Dragon Arden gives Andraste a new assignment, helping Arando capture Sar Dakor, the Mad Regent of the Marathon Regency, using information gained from Sarana Farhanan, who is staying at Ardenrise as the dragon's protected guest. Suddenly, Amazia reveals that she's a Marathon agent, and opens a portal to the far realm, bringing forth an aberrant attack force to destroy Arden and recapture the Sarana. Events. Event 1. The ship needs a captain. Thornrell urges Andraste to take command of the illithid Nautilus Soulmonger and keep Metis the Changeling in line. Event 2. What's wrong with this picture? With Metis at the helm, the Nautilus successfully reconnoiters Myrthon waters, gathering intelligence on enemy fleet movements and bases. The ship's elder brain seems very helpful in this endeavor and well disposed toward Amazia, who raised it from the dead. Event 3. We really don't belong here. If Metis is dead set on cutting down travel time by taking the Nautilus through the far realm, another failed series of dungeoneering checks might lead the vessel into a part of the Mad Plain ruled by Makthum Nagatha. Giant tentacles ensnare the ship, and gibbering orb emissary of Makthum Nagatha aboards the vessel to negotiate the crew's surrender or a more suitable offering to the nine-tongued worm. Event 4. By your command, my lady. Back in Iomandra, Osterneth informs Metis that Alethar Balefrost and his operatives have perfected a way to shield the Nautilus against changes to reality evoked by the Dragon's Eye constellation, and orders him to guide the ship to the tiny island of Krons, where Veknite ritualists are waiting to board the ship and cast the ritual to protect the vessel from the reality-altering constellation. Event 5. It's all about secrets. The ship arrives at the prearranged coordinates, a craggy island inhabited by Krons, a skeletal red dragon overlord under Alethar Balefrost's control. The Veknites have an artificially constructed demiplane that overlaps the natural world at this point. While Veknite ritualists emerge to cast their warding spell on the ship, Alethar Balefrost smuggles special operatives onto the ship for the trip to Ardenrise, but strangely enough, Melik, with his otherworldly connection to the starspawn Ulban and the ship's elder brain, can sense them. En route, the Veknites try to deprive the heroes and Knights of Arden of their memories so that they alone are privy to the intelligence gathered in Myrthon waters. Knowledge is power, after all. Event 6. Many dragons died here. Thornrell guides the Nautilus towards a mist-shrouded star-shaped island, littered with crumbled statues of dragons. Phantom dragons descend from the sky to fetch the heroes and bear them safely to Arden's fortress atop the spire that rises from the middle of the island. The story of the island is that a powerful dragon-slaying wizard once resided there, and that many dragons united to slay him, only to fall prey to a powerful petrifying ward. They were turned to stone and became testaments to the wizard's power. Eventually, one dragon hit upon the idea of hiring adventurers to eliminate the wizard, and her plan succeeded. Arden was that dragon. The heroes are reunited with Arando Coronar and meet Farhan, the daughter of Myrthon Regent. She fled her homeland to escape the madness that has engulfed it. Arden asks Andraste to join Arando on a rescue mission to capture Farhan's family, including the regent, and thus destabilize the Myrthon government. Event 7. So fall the Knights of Arden. Having allowed the heroes to lead her straight into Arden's lair, the priest Amazia reveals that she's a Myrthon agent and a living gate to the far realm. She summons forth a large force of Myrthon soldiers as well as an old friend of the heroes, Ramiel, the demon-possessed elf. He uses the dragon orb given to him by the PCs to subjugate Arden and turn her against the knights and the heroes. Alex's cousin, the red shirt, Bastian, tries to stop Ramiel and might be killed off. Left to his own devices, Nirska assassinates Amazia to close the living gate. Whoever kills Amazia becomes deranged, as per permanent confusion, and although a remove affliction ritual rids the affliction, the individual remains ever haunted by glimpses of the far realm. Event X. They call me Xantham Zale. Depending on how events unfold, the starspawn Godling, Alabar, might use the Dragon's Eye constellation to trigger another reality change, inadvertently bringing Xantham Zale from the Wednesday night campaign into the Monday night game. Xantham displaces Andraste as party leader, but who knows what'll happen when he actually shows up and tries to take charge. Wackiness, one assumes. Having been a puppet of Alabar himself, Xantham senses that there's a piece of the Starspawn Godling lodged deep in Kithbalar's mind, a result of the change in reality. Other role-playing notes. The Vast Mirage. Will Andraste, Therlin, and the Knights of Arden allow Baharush, a known Vast Mirage agent, anywhere near Ardenrise? Stan will need to be on his game if he wants to keep from being sidelined in events 6 and 7. If he's forced to remain aboard the Illithid Nautilus, the ship's Elder Brain can keep him company and turn on him once Amazia tips her hand. The Von Hayden drama. Bastian Von Hayden, Alex's NPC cousin, is introduced here for the first time. Bastian's a likable NPC who can provide Alex with news about his beleaguered family and is also someone to throw in harm's way. A red shirt. If you've followed this column from the beginning, you've seen this sort of episode summary before. My episode summaries are very modular, and each element is short and surprisingly easy to write. And you know what? They become even easier to produce with practice, and they collectively form the Bible for my campaign. Preparing for combat encounters. Once I have an episode summary on paper and in my head, preparing for the actual combat encounter is relatively easy. There are 3 things I need to think about: miniatures for key monsters and NPCs, stat blocks for unique monsters and NPCs, and tactical maps for key encounter locations. I have a large selection of miniatures and given time can find something appropriate for any monster or NPC in my campaign. I keep a selection of stock NPCs, minis for different races, and containers that I take with me to gaming tables. And I pull monster minis from a giant coffin-sized plastic bin I keep under my desk. It's the worst organizational system in the history of miniatures collecting. Sorting my minis is one of those rainy day activities I never get around to doing, which is inexcusable since I live in Seattle, which gets more than its fair share of rainy days. I've already discussed my secrets for creating instant stat blocks, so I won't repeat myself here. When it comes to maps, I try to reuse existing materials where practical. For example, I keep an array of stock tactical maps for shipboard battles. It's no accident that a lot of action in my campaign takes place on the decks of ships. Most of my creative efforts go into mapping unique and important set pieces. For Arden's Fortress, I have 2 options. I can design something new or steal a fortress map from some previously published source in the manner I previously discussed. Fortunately, since Arden prefers to assume humanoid form, and her home was once the lair of a wizard, I don't have to create something humongous befitting a dragon of her stature. Given the choice between reusing an existing map or creating a new one, I prefer the latter endeavor because the act of sitting down to draw the map forces me to imagine what goes on inside the location I'm creating. It gets me in the mood to dream about how Arden furnishes her lair, and what surprises might be in store for the heroes who take time to explore it. It also inspires me to think of interesting encounter setups and terrain. Some DMs are content with a roughly drawn map or doodle. But if I can't spend a generous amount of time creating something new, I'd rather just pillage something. When it comes to maps, I rarely see the event horizon before I'm completely sucked in. I could spend an entire weekend deciding Arden's Fortress, from the time I settle on the architectural layout to the time I finish putting pen to graph paper. Talk about getting sucked into the black hole. Next week, I'll let some of my esteemed players chime in and mention a few things they've learned about dungeon mastering from the weekly abuse inflicted upon them by yours truly. Until the next encounter. Also, don't forget to follow the link in the description to pick up my first ever adventure and setting for free on Patreon and DriveThruRPG now. Dive into the desert region of Gondolar as adventurers making their way to the budding city town of Silt Pass in search of gold, glory, and answers to the secrets of a long-lost empire. In this first adventure, your heroes will defend the Dune Dancer, a sandcutter airship from a legendary group of bandits known as the Stormbringers. Do you have what it takes to stop the Stormbringers and their bombastic leader Therok, or will you make a deal with the devil of the sands and join them? Decide your destiny in the first of 6 adventures. TSI, Therok, Stormbringer, Ironmane.